I get thousands of letters from viewers of my television show and questions from students in my cooking classes. And the most common misconception about microwave cooking is that somehow the machine does the cooking. This just isn't so. You do the cooking. You have to stir and poke, taste and adjust and improvise and do all the other things that you do in conventional cooking. So you are the cook, and the microwave oven is just a machine that heats the ingredients. But it does so with two important benefits. First, the mess of cooking is much less, and the final result is realized much sooner than when using conventional methods, or as I refer to it, primitive cooking methods. Now, what I want you to learn in the next hour is to overcome any fears that you may have about microwave cooking. They're based on the technology of it or learning how to use it. After all, it's just a tool, like all the other tools in your kitchen, and you are the cook. You see all these beautiful dishes on this table? Well, I'm going to show you what you have to learn to prepare dishes like this yourself. Now, you might think that you can't, but oh, yes, you can. And it's so simple, and here's what I'm going to show you. I'll explain first about cooking in general, and then microenergy in particular. Then I'm going to show you some experiments that you can try yourself to not only get how the oven works, but why it works that way. And then there are my 11 important tips that every cook needs to know to give you a head start in learning to cook microwave. I'll also tell you something about the best accessories to have for microwave cooking. Things like my instant thermometer, for instance, or the indispensable ring pan. And then we get to the fun part, the thing I like to do best of all, and that's to cook. First, I'll show you how to convert your favorite recipe to microwave cooking. And then we'll do some recipes from scratch so that you can see for yourself how easy it can be. But you know, I hope you really like to cook, because you'll soon see that if you're a good cook, the microwave will make you an even better one. But I'm sorry to say that if you're a lousy cook, the microwave will just make you a faster lousy cook. Well, let's down to business. Look at that intimidating machine on the counter. Now, you may find it hard to believe that as your skill increases, you're going to begin to put away your primitive cooking devices and only use them. The oven is so efficient and clean and versatile and quick, you'll wonder why it took so long to learn how to use it. To build up your confidence, remember these two little ideas. First, read your manual carefully. Then read it again. Go back and learn one function at a time, like how to set the timer or the power setting. And when you've mastered that, learn how to use memory or the probe. Do it one at a time or you might get discouraged or confused. The second idea is this. Rely at first on foolproof recipes, the kind that are almost impossible to mess up. If you do these two things, and how to use the features of your oven one at a time, and start with foolproof recipes, you'll be ready for the real excitement of microwave cooking. Now, what is cooking anyway? Actually, it's nothing more than the application of heat to food. The heat causes the food fibers to break down, thereby tenderizing the food, and it also causes fats and sugars to caramelize, which adds and enhances the appearance of the food. And when you've added enough heat, it also sterilizes the food by killing the bacteria. Now, heating is done in three ways. One way is by conduction, like when you cook something in a pan of your stove. The heat from the stove is transferred to the pan, and in turn is transferred to the food, all by direct contact. The surface molecules of the food are heated, and they transfer the heat to the molecules deeper inside of the food. So gradually, the heat penetrates into the center of the food. Now, we all know what happens if you aren't careful about how the way you cook this way. The food can be burned on the outside if it's cooked too fast before the inside is cooked. Now, the second way heat is applied to food is through convection, which involves the movement of heat-carrying air molecules within a given area. Your home furnaces uses convection by heating air and then pushing it throughout the house. Convection ovens use the technique also, as does your conventional oven. The heat is applied to the surface of the food in the case of a roast, and then is conducted to the interior of the food. In the case of a casserole like this, you have two forms of heating. First, the hot air molecule heat the dish. The dish in turn heats the food by conducting the energy to the inside. The third form of cooking is by radiation. Now in this case, energy radiates from a source, the rays of the sun. And when you broil or barbecue, you're also cooking by radiation. Also, microwave cooking uses radiation. The energy is imposed directly on food, causing the molecules to vibrate, which generates heat from friction. Now, microwaving is faster because the heat penetrates deeper into the food, but the interior of the food is heated by conduction, just as in these other forms of cooking. Microwave energy is a common form of radiation, but don't panic. It isn't like nuclear radiation. There are basically two kinds of radiation, ion and non-ionizing. Non-ionizing radiation doesn't break up atoms and molecules like X-rays and nuclear energy do. Now, non-ionizing radiation includes things like radio waves, infrared waves, light waves, and of course, microwaves. They don't remain in the material to which they've been applied. In addition to their use in cooking, microwaves are used to conduct telephone calls in our telephone systems, carrying long-distance phone calls. In effect, microwaves are very short radio waves. And in a microwave oven, they're produced by a transmitter, a magnetron tube. And what this does, it broadcasts them directly into the cavity of the oven. When they come in contact with water molecules or sugar or fat molecules, like in food, they cause these molecules to vibrate. The vibration causes friction, which in turn causes heat, which out of the radio wave ends up as heat in food. Now, when you turn off the power in your microwave oven, the energy travels so fast that they're gone instantly. It's like when you walk into a room and turn off the light. There's no more light in the room. The three properties of microwaves in micro cooking are they create food heat in anything that contains water, sugar, or fat. They reflect off of metal, and they're transmitted through anything else that doesn't contain water or metal. Now, since a microwave oven is nothing more than a metal box, and since mice can't go through metal, the energy is confined within that area. Now, conversely, if you tried to cook in a metal pot in your microwave, since you cannot go through the metal, you couldn't cook the food inside. But that's not true of little bits of metal. And on my TV series, which is called Microwaves Are for Cooking, I intentionally leave a metal spoon or a fork in a dish. And somebody always says, hey, you can't do that. But that relatively small amount of metal just reflects the energy off of it, which bounces around the interior until it finds a water, sugar, or fat molecule. And later on, I'll show you how metal can help things even better. We're going to do some experiments next, but first I want to impress upon you microwave oven safety. If these things weren't safe, first of all, they could sell them. But people still seem to be concerned about it until they're told that this is perhaps the safest one in your kitchen. And here's why. If you could put your hand inside of the oven, you'd heat it up, you can heat up a roast. But you can't do that, because when you open the door, these interlock switches disconnect the circuits, and you cannot turn them on. It turns off automatically, and it's devoid of any energy inside. Now, if you're also concerned about being able to see the food in there, and people say, hey, I can see in there, that means that microwave energy can get out, is not true. These little tiny holes here are smaller than the diameter of a microwave, which is about as big as my little finger or the diameter of this wooden spatula handle. Now, you can see in, because light can go in and out of these holes, but the energy cannot get out. Now, plastic, ceramic, and other prepared cookware don't have water or fat molecules, so they don't get hot from microwave energy. In fact, I have some here, and I can show you what happens with various materials in microwave. Here's a plastic dish made specifically for microwave cooking. Energy goes right through this to the food inside. No effect whatsoever. If I place this in the oven empty, you can put it on for 5 minutes, take it out. It will not be hot whatsoever because the energy is not attracted to anything in the material. This is a ceramic pot. The same thing is true. There is nothing in here that absorbs microwave energy, so the energy goes right through to the food and it heats inside. Be careful with some dishes like ceramic and glass, because when the food gets hot, it in turn heats up the dish. Now, this is conduction of heat the other way. Instead of from the dish to the food, it's from the food dish. And you could even use wooden utensils, but watch out, because sometimes the glue in here, and also from washing, the wood will absorb some moisture and it can be hot. Now finally, the thing is so safe because there's no open flame or heating element, so you can't burn yourself. Danger of fire is virtually non-existent. We'll come back with some experiments that'll help you understand microwave ovens and microwave cooking even more. It'll take you some time to get used to doing things by microwave, but I've put together a few experiments that you can do on your own. In fact, you might want to try these right along with me now. They demonstrate how microwave energy affects different materials. I'm going to place different materials in this oven. First of all, a can of beans, a plastic cup, another plastic cup with a little bit of water, a potato, a made-for-microwave dish, a ceramic dish, a wooden spoon, and a cloth towel. Turn the oven on for a short period of time and you'll see what happens to those materials. Now, if you recall, microwave energy affects water molecules by causing it to vibrate, thus causing friction and thus causing heat. It is transmitted through any material that does not have water or fat or sugar, and it reflects off of metal. By feeling these various materials, you can see what has happened. The towel is a little bit warm. There's no water in this, but the humidity in the air has given it some moisture, so it gets warm. The spoon, likewise, has been washed, and it has water content. Also, the moisture in the air is here, so it gets hot. The ceramic dish has no water whatsoever, so it's as cool as when I put it in. The same is true of the plastic dish. Very cool. The glasses, without anything in it, is as cool as when I put it into the oven. The other glass that has the water in it, you can see the water is hot, as is the bottom of the cup. And the potato, which is loaded with water, as are most foods, is quite warm. And last, the can of beans, a metal can which reflects the energy, is just as cold as put it in. Now, when you're doing things in your microwave oven, you can use the principle of leaving metal in there. For example, if I cook this sauce and leave the spoon right in there, nothing is going to happen to that spoon, but it reflects the energy to the other moisture in there. If I leave it in there too long, food is going to get hot and in turn conduct that heat up through the spoon. The same is true if you leave a spoon pot on top of your range. The water gets hot and conducts the heat up the stem of the spoon. The spoon in the microwave does not get hot from microwave energy. It gets hot from the thing that is heated with the water molecules conducting that heat up the spoon. Now, here's an experiment that is very important if you're thinking about using different kinds of crockery or different materials in your microwave oven that you're not sure of the content. Take the dish along with a little cup of water, place in your microwave oven. Put it on for 1 minute, and when you take them out, water in this cup should be hot. The dish should be cool. If this dish is hot, it's absorbing energy, and it may crack and it may break, so don't use it for microwave cooking. There's one thing in microwave cooking that excites people a great deal, and it's what we call arcing. Now, arcing occurs when you have metal with little tiny gaps in it, and this converts the radio energy, the microwave radio energy, into heat and light and produces a spark. And I can show that to you by taking a bunch of aluminum foil and crumpling it up so that I leave little gaps all throughout the surface of the aluminum foil. When I place this in the oven and turn it on for a short period of time, you can see an arc. Now, that isn't going to hurt anything as far as the metal is concerned, but because it's creating heat, if there's anything else in there that is flammable, it could catch on fire, and that would not be good for your oven. A prime example of that is a loaf of bread with a little metal twist stem on it. If you put this in your oven, you can get an arc. The arc in turn will light the paper, and you can get a fire in your oven. So don't put little twist stems in the microwave oven. Also, if you have dishes, lovely dishes that are trimmed with metal, these little particles in here can cause arcing, and it'll burn all that metal trim off of here. The one word to keep in mind when you see an arc in your oven is to stop the oven.
rearrange the metal or use a different dish, and you won't have any problems. Now, metal can be used to advantage in microwave cooking because of that reflection property. In fact, when you're cooking a turkey, at some times when you have a large item like this that takes a long time to cook, some areas may tend to dry out, like the ends of the turkey. So you can place a little bit of foil covering around the turkey leg. And also the wings, which are much thinner than the thicker portion on the breast, can tend to dry out. So you place a little bit of aluminum foil around the wing. And for large turkeys, you'll sometimes see that the breast portion right up here will tend to dry out, and you have something that we call turkey jerky. Take foil and fold it up so you have no sharp edges, and put it over the spot that you see drying. Another example of using metal reflectants to enhance your cooking is with a stew or something that has exposed pieces of meat and vegetable. The tops of these can dry out from the direct imposition of the microwave on them. So what you do is to take aluminum foil, crimp the edges, and put it over the top of the stew. Then replace the cover to keep in the steam. Now what will happen is that the microwaves are reflected off the metal. They will bounce around the inside of the oven and come in from the bottom. So it'll simmer in the juices and the top portions will not dry out. An example of using metal reflectants is shown by these two dishes of carrots. In this case, I put sliced carrots in a microwave dish and covered it with plastic wrap. Now you can see these woody carrots that have less water than some other vegetables have shriveled up and really look rather unpalatable. The same kind of dish, covered with plastic wrap to keep in the moisture, but covered with foil to direct the energy to the bottom of the dish where the water is, and you see beautiful carrots, just right for serving. Use metal in microwave cooking only to prevent things from drying. It's your friend, it'll help you cook, and I have some more things to show you about how to use your microwave oven with greater success. This next experiment concerns a subject that causes the most aggravating controversy about microwave cooking, and that's browning. Constantly hearing something like this: Don, I tried to make a hamburger in my microwave and it didn't look nearly as nice as the way it comes out when it's done on the grill. That's because it doesn't take as long. But if you like burgers on the grill the way I do, then by all means use your barbecue. That's what it's for. But the question is still, can you get things to brown in the microwave? Why, of course you can. But let's look at what browning really is. It's simply the caramelization of fats and sugars on the surface of the meat. For example, on some of my recent television shows, I prepared a number of dishes that came out really great. See how beautifully the browning process works? Now that's the color of a chicken cooked conventionally. A lot of times you forget that that's the color without basting. This is just plain old chicken. Now here is a chicken, and here's another one that I did in the microwave oven. This one I cooked very, very quickly. 20 minutes, it's completely cooked at high power in the microwave. And here's one that I did for 45 minutes at 30% power. So you can see the difference. There's relatively no difference whatsoever. The reason that this one got a little browner than this one is that I did it slower and approximating the time of the chicken cooked in the conventional oven, so it had a chance to develop that caramelization, which is what lends the color to any foods in a microwave or a conventional oven. Now, of course, you can enhance your cooking by using any number of brown agents. There's some on the market. Look around. You can find they give it I think it's a better color. And again, the point is make your food look as good as you can. If you baste them, that's not unnatural. That's cooking. And you pay particular attention to your cooking so it comes out the best that it will. This is soy sauce. You can use soy sauce for a browning agent. And even if you marinate in red wine, you'll find that the color of foods cooked in your microwave will be just fine. Okay, now let me show you another thing that will perhaps illustrate a little bit better this subject of browning. When you're cooking something on top of your range, in fact, if I take a hamburger here and throw it in this pan and let it cook. Now, if I take that hamburger out in, let's say, 15 or 20 seconds, the color is not going to be brown because it takes time for that heat to cause that caramelization. You know, when you hear the sound of something cooking, the sizzling like that, you know what that is? That's molecules banging together, causing sound you can hear. The molecules are activated by the heat in here just the same as they're activated by the heat in this microwave oven. So when I take this hamburger out and turn it over, you can see the color here. Right here on the surface is quite dark. On the other sides here, it's not really brown. It takes time for things to become brown no matter how you cook them. With both conventional cooking and microwave cooking, you have to remember that the cooking process doesn't stop the moment you take the dish from the oven. This is particularly true with items that have a compact, heavy mass, such as a roast. Energy retained in the food continues the cooking process after the food has been removed from the heat source. You can see this demonstrated with an instant reading thermometer like I always use. I remove this roast from the microwave at 130 degrees. And if I let it set right here on the counter for 10 minutes with no energy upon it, it will go up to about 140 degrees. Keeping that in mind, remember to always undercook dishes slightly in the microwave because the residual energy will bring it up to the upper temperature. If it doesn't, you can always put it back in again, right? But you can't uncook it. So don't spoil your meal by overcooking. Now here's the final experiment I want to show you. How to use the microwave oven probe. Many newer ovens have this handy probe, which is simply a temperature sensing device that is plugged into the food and then plugged into the oven. When the temperature reaches the level selected, it automatically turns off the power. And here's a very easy way to see how it works. Insert the probe into a potato and then set the temperature for 180 degrees. Now look at your watch and note how long it takes for the oven to turn off. Now, take a second potato, insert the probe and repeat the process into the potato and plug it into your oven. Now again set the temperature for 180 degrees, but set the power control to 50%. Now if you've done it right, it should take just about twice as long to cook the potato to 180 degrees at half the power. So you can cook slowly using the probe or fast and get the desired results that you want. And here's some things to remember about the probe. Don't use it on irregularly shaped items like chickens or turkeys. There's too much temperature variation for the probe to work properly. But if you use your instant read thermometer, you can check around at various areas and make sure that the turkey is done properly. The probe works very well in dishes that have a relatively uniform mass, such as roasts, and also such as stews and casseroles. The probe is a very handy tool if it's used properly. Just because your oven uses advanced technology, it doesn't mean that it works by magic. It doesn't. It's no more magical than your toaster or electric frying pan. So learn how to use it and make it do what you want it to do. Don't let it run your life in the kitchen. Treat it just like you would your stovetop, and if you feel like it, open the door and see how a dish is coming along. Don't let the digital clock intimidate you into waiting for the signal to sound. If you change your mind about the cooking time, change it. After all, you're the boss. You wouldn't watch helplessly as the sauce burned on your stovetop, so don't do it with your microwave. Although you'll remember that I predicted that you will soon become addicted to using your marvelous microwave oven, please know that it's not a substitute for every cooking device that you have in your kitchen. It does a lot of things perfectly, including roasting and sautéing and preparing one-dish meals, steaming, reheating, thawing, and any cooking that doesn't call for crusting or drying of the food. But there are things that don't come out so good either. The microwave is less effective for baking and frying and some egg and cheese dishes, although you can make a wonderful quiche in your microwave. Simply use common sense on this. If you love a charcoal broiled steak over hickory chips, well, for heaven's sakes, use the barbecue. Use the proper tool for what it does best. After all, you wouldn't do a standing rib roast in a wok, would you? We talked a little about this before. After you've estimated the cooking time for your dish, reduce it by about 10%. For example, if you have a 4-pound roast and you're figuring 7 minutes per pound, that would be 28 minutes. Cutting 10% from the total, you'll have 25 minutes. Set the timer for that. Then check the roast because it may have cooked faster than you thought it would. And you can always pop it back into the oven if you want to continue cooking. When cooking chickens or roasts or turkeys or any other large item, by temperature, cook them 10 degrees less than you want to, because microwave cooked foods continue cooking even more than conventionally cooked foods do. And when you cook vegetables, do them until they're barely done, and let the residual cooking do them a little bit more, maybe just a couple of minutes. How you cover the food usually determines how it will cook in your microwave oven. If you want moist cooking, steaming for example, cover the food securely to retain all the moisture. You can achieve that by covering the food with the lid to the container or by using plastic wrap. If you want it drier, let the moisture escape by using wax paper. Wax paper is also good for preventing spattering in the oven. Use metal to direct the energy of the oven. When cooking a chicken, for example, cover the legs with aluminum foil during the first part of the cooking. Remove the foil halfway through the cooking cycle and the entire bird will be done perfectly. You can cover a stew with aluminum foil also and force the energy to come in through the bottom of the container so it will simmer and not dry out the top. Modern microwave ovens allow you to select an energy level usually stated in percentages. Thus, cooking on high is 100% of the available energy. And you have a number of options that provide for slower, lower heat. And here you just use common sense. Tougher foods require longer, slower cooking so they'll become tender. And foods such as roasts and turkeys also benefit from slow cooking. Just as with conventional cooking techniques, you still have to stir the food if it needs it, and taste it, and poke it. Do the things to food that you always do. And remember that you can always open the oven door anytime you want, and you won't lose any heat. The heat is in the food, not in the oven. Every time you open your conventional oven, you lose as much as 100 degrees of heat. But that's not true with your microwave. You've probably learned dozens of tricks in conventional cooking over the years. You know, things like doing a casserole until it's almost done, then covering it with grated cheese and putting it under the broiler for a couple of minutes to melt cheese without burning it. Well, you can do the same kind of thing with your microwave oven. Here's a neat one. Put a lemon in your microwave for 1 minute, and then when you squeeze it, you'll get twice the amount of juice. The more you use your oven, the more things you'll find that you can do with it. I'll bet you've got some favorite recipes that you've been doing for a long time, and now you'd like to try them in the microwave. Well, conversion of recipes is easy once you learn the basic differences between microwave and conventional cooking. Here are some guidelines that will help. First, cut the cooking time by 1/4 to 1/3 of the time required in conventional recipes. Next, cut the liquid by at least half, since you don't need liquid to prevent burning or scorching. Use oil and butter for taste if you like, but not to prevent sticking. If you're doing a stew or a soup, cook the main ingredients and add the stock later. And use your favorite seasonings just as you usually do. Be daring, experiment, live it up, and learn. There are all sorts of dishes, utensils, and other accessories designed for microwave cooking, and I'll talk about them more later on. Some are just gimmicks and aren't really very helpful at all, but most of them are just great. When cooking with your microwave oven, be sure you cook in the proper sequence. For example, if you're having a meal of baked potatoes, roast beef, and fresh vegetables, cook the potatoes first, very dense, and they'll hold the energy for a long time. Then cook the roast, and when you take it out of the during the time of residual cooking, you can cook the vegetables. And don't forsake your conventional oven and stovetop. You can be doing something there while your microwave is occupied. People seem to assume that microwave prepared food doesn't taste as good as conventionally prepared recipes. Well, this is nonsense. The microwave often does a better job, so don't ever apologize for using the microwave to prepare dinner for your guests. If you're concerned about it, don't tell them you've done that incredible roast until after dinner is over and the reviews are in. And then tell them there's nothing to it since I got my microwave.
To make your microwave cooking easier and more efficient, you should have the right dishes and accessories. Now, you probably have a lot of them at home right now. Things like crockery. These work very well. And also glass items are good for microwave cooking. Here's the old loaf pan that you use for bread, which is a very handy dish to use in your microwave. And, of course, any kind of covered glass casseroles that you have work well. And for that weird plastic dish that you've had around the house, these are very good for reheating things in your microwave. And you can, of course, even serve and cook on your serving platters. And we've all been known to put our coffee cups right in the microwave oven. There are some unique items that are designed for microwave that perform a certain task. For example, this muffin pan is very useful, not only for muffins and cupcakes, but also for things like filled vegetable cups. And the tube pan is extremely versatile. Here's a small one, and the reason these work so well in your microwave is that they have a center post that is hollow, and it allows the energy to come from the inside and the outside, and the foods cook much evener. You should have a lot of covered casseroles, and when you can get the kind that all fit together, it's much more efficient because these 8 dishes nesting together take up very little space in your cupboard. You've heard me expound on the virtues of the instant read thermometer. This, I think, is essential for all cooking, conventional, barbecue, and microwave. I had a special one made with a large dial, so it's easier for you to see the temperature as it's cooking. And I also have one with a pocket protector which has instructions on this for easy reference to cooking by temperature. Now, bacon does extremely well in a microwave oven. So do roasts. You want to keep them out of the juices. So there's a large array of roasting racks and bacon trays that are available. And these come in various sizes and shapes. Even a small one for that last-minute hamburger. And any flat glass tray is very good for items that you want spread out to have larger area than mass. And don't forsake those mixing bowls that you have. These are just wonderful to mix the food and then to cook it in your microwave oven. And you can make some interesting molds with this, which are delightful when you unmold them on a serving platter for a little unique recipe. Popcorn is becoming very, very popular, and it does extremely well in a microwave oven. Specially designed popcorn poppers work very well, and you don't have to use any butter or oil, so it's better for you. We talked about natural browning in the microwave. There are also many products on the market that will enhance the color of all food cooked in microwave or conventional ovens, such as this KitchenAid browning liquid or Micro Shake. Marinate in red wine, you'll get a delightful color on your meats. And you, of course, can use soy sauce and even steak sauce. The coverings to the food is very important also. I think that aluminum foil is very useful because it protects food and prevents overcooking and drying out. And then there's plastic wrap. For dishes that do not have a cover, you place this over the top and retain the steam. Wax paper is extremely useful in all cooking, microwave and conventional. Put it on the bottom of your oven, and if you have any boilovers, just take out the wax paper, throw it away, and you have a clean oven. And of course, roasting bags are just as useful in a microwave as they are in a conventional oven. When you have the proper tools and the proper accessories, you're going to find that your satisfaction with microwave cooking is going to be greatly enhanced. Okay, now that you know everything about why and how your microwave oven works, it's time to roll up your sleeves and have some fun cooking, making your family and friends envious and getting all those rave reviews. Just remember, if you thought you couldn't do it, here's where you prove that yes, you can cook microwave. I'm going to show you how to convert one of my favorite recipes. It's for osso buco, or veal shanks Milan style.
And the recipe conventionally calls for 6 veal shanks, a half a cup of purpose flour, a third of a cup of olive oil, a medium onion finely chopped, 1 carrot finely chopped, a celery stalk finely chopped, and 3/4 of a cup of dry white wine. 8-ounce can of crushed Italian tomatoes, 2 tablespoons of chopped parsley, 2 cloves of garlic chopped, salt and pepper to taste, and additional chopped parsley. All right. Now here are the instructions on how to prepare this recipe conventionally, and I'll tell you what you should do if you cook it by microwave. Place the veal shanks on aluminum foil and sprinkle with flour. Well, you do the same thing whether you're cooking microwave or conventional. Heat the oil in a heavy casserole. Well, you don't have to heat any oil because your pot in your microwave doesn't get hot, so you don't need that lubricating factor. Then, you brown the meat on all sides over medium heat. Okay, place them in your microwave oven and cook them until they become brown, about 10 to 15 minutes. Remove the meat from casserole and add the onion, carrot, and celery. Now, here's a very interesting thing. In microwave, you take those flavor vegetables, which are carrot, onion, and celery, saute them first for about 3 minutes in the pan in your microwave oven. Then add the meat and brown it up for about 10 or 15 minutes. Stir in the wine. This is fine because there's only 3/4 of a cup of dry white wine. For a lot more than that, you could reduce it by 1/2. And you add the tomatoes, cover the casserole, reduce the heat, and simmer for 1 1/2 hours. In microwave, you don't add the liquid, which in this case would be in the tomatoes, until after the meat has been cooked to tenderness. So in this case, to convert it, you would return the veal or the veal is in the casserole, so you cook it for about 30 minutes instead of 1 1/2 hours, and it'll just be falling off the bone tender. Then you add the tomatoes and cook it through until it becomes warm. Season with parsley, salt, and pepper, and that's all there is to it. Just heat it through for about another 10 minutes. So what would have taken you over 2 hours conventionally will take you about 40 minutes by microwave. And that's all there is to it. When you're looking at a recipe, a conventional recipe, and when you want to convert it, just remember that to cook microwave, you've got to think microwave. To get you started in the joys of microwave cooking, I've prepared some wonderful recipes that I think you'll like to try with me. Each one of them will prove to you that you can easily learn to master the art of microwave cooking. Each one of them can be altered to suit your own personal taste, and each of them has a list of ingredients that will be displayed on your screen. Of course, you can stop the tape whenever you like, or go backwards, or skip something and go ahead. And that's what makes this so much fun. Here's the first recipe for you to try. This recipe is a microwave adaptation of a classic Chinese dish. It's called ginger chicken, and it uses the technique of placing the seasonings and sauces under the skin. And you can also use this in many other fowl recipes. The advantage is that the flavors really permeate the flesh of the birds and makes them so tasty. As you know, chicken skin has a lot of fat, and many times this prevents the flavor from getting into the flesh of the bird. Also, let the chicken marinate for at least 1 hour before you cook it. And look at the beautiful brown color. Who says foods don't brown in a microwave oven? Now, I must admit that this color is primarily from the soy sauce in the marinade. I'll be back to show you how to make ginger chicken in your microwave. To make a ginger chicken, you start out with a 3.5 to 4 pound frying chicken. And then here's the technique of loosening the skin. Take a spatula handle, a blunt object that won't pierce the skin, and just run it down underneath the skin and just loosen it all the way around. Go down the drumstick and around the side. The same on the other side. Just loosen like this. And then turn the bird over and do the other side the same way. Just go down the side, be very careful and don't worry about getting into the wing portion there. Okay, loosen all the way around, and that's all there is to it. Okay, now to make the marinade for this chicken, we use finely chopped ginger. And I don't ever take the peel off. Some good Chinese cooks told me that you never have to do that. So mince up about 4 tablespoons of fresh ginger, place that in a mixing bowl, And then also, garlic is optional, but I really think it adds something to the ginger chicken recipe. So 2 big cloves of garlic, mince those up very finely, and add that to the mixing bowl also. Then, the other addition would be soy sauce, about 1 cup of soy sauce. And I like to use the Chinese soy sauce, which has a little darker color, and a little bit of sherry for a little added touch of flavor. Just about a ½ ounce of sherry. Okay, mix that all together. And now here's what you do to pour this underneath the skin of the chicken. Put it in a bowl and lift the skin, just make a little pocket, and then pour it under like that, and then just smudge it all around. Oh, goodness gracious. You get to know your chickens this way, too. On the other side, same thing, and then turn it over, and again, do the back side. Okay, after you've done this, let the bird set for a while, an hour or so. The longer, of course, the better it's going to taste. Then, place it on a roasting rack, and either cover it with wax paper or with a cover, one of these colander type covers, because you want the air to escape so that the skin will get nice and crispy on the outside. Here's one other technique. If you see the skin starting to rip, just take a little skewer and just weave it together like this to hold that skin together. Just like that, and that'll hold it all so it looks like a chicken, and then afterward you pull that skin up. Pardon, the toothpick out. Set that aside, roast it about 25 minutes on high power, and you will have a ginger chicken. And this is what it looks like when you're all done. Isn't that beautiful? Look at the color. I usually recommend to new microwave cooks that they cook up a leg of lamb as their first attempt at roasting, because it's so easy and it's really very hard to screw up. To make a little fancier roast lamb, have the butcher debone it and then stuff it with a blend of herbs. Also, when you have it deboned, you tie it in a more rounded shape, which is better for microwave cooking. And I like to coat the surface with a browning agent so the color is really pleasing. But it's not that necessary because you have to cook a leg of lamb long enough for it to cook throughout, and it browns up really quite naturally in your microwave oven. Now, when you cook a leg of lamb, notice the small amount of juices that are released. They stay in the meat when you cook by microwave, and I'll be back to show you how. When you buy a leg of lamb from the butcher, it's normally in this shape here. And you can see that there's a narrow end and then a thicker end. Now, if you're going to roast it just like that in your microwave, what happens sometimes is that the narrow end cooks faster, and therefore you have lamb jerky at this end before the body of the roast is done. To avoid that problem, we use our old friend, aluminum foil, and just wrap that around the narrow end for half of the cooking time. And then after you've accomplished that much cooking, take it off so it'll continue cooking here and be the same doneness as the bigger portion of the leg of lamb. Then, as I said, ask the butcher to debone it. Now, you can do this yourself, but it's a little bit more difficult than other home trimming methods. And just what you have to do is just cut along the bone and separate the flesh, and then take the bone out, and you have a deboned leg of lamb. I'll just finish up the process right here and then show you how I like to stuff it. And the stuffings, again, are more or less according to your imagination, but use those things that complement the taste of lamb. And I like to use rosemary and garlic. Save this for the dog, and you can also make a great stock with a bone like this. So, spread it out, and then season it with, first of all, I'm going to use some chopped garlic. Chop it up kind of, I like larger pieces when you do a leg of lamb, and just spread them all over the surface of the open portion of the lamb. Then some nice, crisp, fresh parsley. About 3 or 4 tablespoons, just enough again to spread over the inside of the lamb. And lemon pepper, there's these mixtures of lemon pepper which are very good, so sprinkle some of that on the inside. Lemon and lamb is wonderful. And what could be better to complement lamb than some rosemary leaves? This is the new Easy Open pack. So put some rosemary leaves over the top of that. Then roll it up and tie it with some string, and see what a nice rounded shape it has? That's very important in the roasting of meats in your microwave. Use a browning agent on the outside, and that'll really give it some color. It looks just so luscious when it comes out with that glistening color on the surface of the lamb. And then a piece of wax paper over the top, as always with any roasting, to keep the spattering that occurs when meats cook from getting all over the inside of the oven. And that's all you have to do for a leg of lamb. It comes out perfect. The next time you have a formal dinner and want to impress your guest and serve a glorious side dish, think about making these. Aren't they pretty? And they're really very simple to make. These are called tomatoes filled with broccoli mousseline. Now you can make a variety of mousselines in your microwave oven and they turn out fantastic every time. Serve them in a mold. In fact, a ring mold is very, very nice, or individual serving dishes, or in little custard cups. And of course you can place them in other vegetables, as I've done with these tomatoes. Now, I like to make a watercress mousseline for a leg of lamb, but if you're having just a nice beef roast or a pork roast, the broccoli mousseline in tomato cup is just perfect. And I'll be right back to show you how. Now I'm going to show you how to make these wonderful little broccoli mousselines. It's really very simple, as you're going to see in one moment. First of all, you want to cook up some fresh broccoli and use the flowerets only. I have some already cooked, and I always enjoy so much showing the color that you get when you cook your vegetables by microwave. Because of the fact there's no water in there, you don't leach out the color, the vitamins, or the minerals. Now, to make these, take a tomato, and this is just a perfect size, about the size of a tennis ball, and cut right around the top of the tomato. Instead of cutting off the top, I like to cut around this way because it gives it a better form to fill with the broccoli mousseline. And then take a spoon and just ream out the center of that tomato and scrape out as much as you can of the liquid inside. And another nice little trick here is now to put some seasoning or a little bit of salt and pepper in here if you're using something of a different type of mousse than I'm using right now. One of the primary ingredients in the mousse for today is Parmesan cheese, and that has plenty of salt, so you don't need any more. Take the freshly cooked broccoli and a half a cup of Parmesan cheese, a half pint of whipping cream, 2 eggs, and just a touch of nutmeg. Put that in your food processor and process it until it's smooth into a consistency like that. Okay? Then, take each individual tomato and fill them up. Now, instead of pouring, I like to use a spoon because you can gather up the pulp and also get just enough of the liquid, which is the egg and the cream in there. Otherwise, sometimes if you pour this, the liquid comes out in the first half and you get a lot of the pulp and the processed broccoli in the second half. So one's watery and the other one's just loaded with the broccoli. Now, after you've filled them up, and this is a very, very important technique because tomatoes are very soft, and sometimes when you cook them in your microwave, you can overcook them so you have a pile of tomato sauce with a little broccoli mousseline on top. So take a strip of aluminum foil and wrap it around the tomato, just around the belly like that, and then secure it with a toothpick. Stick it right through the foil into the tomato. And do that with each one of them, and then you place it into something like this cupcake holder. And do as many as you're going to do. Just place them right inside of here or an individual custard cup. Microwave for about 2.5 minutes, and you have a perfect set custard. You may have heard that fish cooks very well in a microwave oven. Well, you heard right. Fish has a very high water content, and microwave energy works best of all by heating water molecules. And a microwave oven cooks very quickly, so your fish comes out moist with all those delicate flavors retained. Now, whether it's a whole fish or fillets or steaks or shellfish, there are lots of recipes for each of these, and they all work beautifully in your microwave. Today, I'm going to show you one of them. And if you live in an area where you can get fresh salmon, you're really lucky. It's one of my favorite kinds of fish. Now, even if you can only get it frozen, it's excellent for this recipe. For the sauce, you use sour cream, but if you like, you can substitute yogurt because it has far fewer calories. Keep watching, and I'll be right back with the recipe. It's time that you want to treat your sweetheart or your husband or wife to a little special fish recipe. And this is salmon steaks with yogurt dill sauce. Now let me mention one thing about salmon steaks. When you see them in the market, you can buy them just as I have them here, all cut up and packaged separately. But if you can buy a whole fish and do it yourself, you're going to save a lot of money. Just compare the price on this salmon steak and the whole fish, and then just for fun, look at the price on the fillet of salmon, and you'll be shocked. Okay, place them together, 2 steaks, one for each of you, on a microwave-proof dish, and in this case I have one in the shape of a fish. Isn't that cute? Okay, now I intertwine the 2 belly flaps with the other one, so again you are equalizing the mass of the fish. And again, the greater portion, the thicker portion, you want to the outside of the dish because that's where most of the microwave energy is imposed upon the food. Now, for this, we're going to put on fresh dill, or if you don't have any fresh, you of course can use dried dill. And it's very, very good. I think that this is one of the advantages that we have in the food business today, that you can get most anything all year round, even if it is dried. Okay, that's all you need for this, and a little glug of wine. Just pour a little, about a quarter of a cup of wine. You don't need very much at all, because in microwave you're using that primarily for flavor and not as a medium in which the fish are cooked. Then place a covering on this. In this case it's plastic wrap, because there is no cover that comes with the fish dish, and that's all there is to it. Allow about 2 minutes per steak, and that's all you have to do. I have some cooked already, and you notice I always say that the dish is never hot. It never gets hot from microwave, but it does get hot from the steam from the cooking. So remove the plastic wrap and then pour off the juices we have here, and add to that some yogurt, and whip it all together, and more dill weed if you like. Just whip that all together, the same sauce. As I say, you can use sour cream, but this has a lot fewer calories. Then pour it over the fish, just like that. And you can decorate with more dill if you'd like, or you can put a couple of lemon slices on the side. And there you've got a simple meal for the 2 of you. It's absolutely delicious, lots of health in there. Fish is so good for you, you should eat much more. And when you have a microwave, it cooks so much better. That's the recipe for salmon steaks with dill sauce. There's a definite affinity between pork and fruit, and the next recipe takes advantage of that factor. It's called a Scandinavian stuffed pork loin, and not only is it delicious, but it really looks great. Now, loin of pork is sometimes a little expensive, but there's hardly any waste, so it's still a good bargain. And be sure to cook your pork to a temperature of 180 degrees. But since you're going to do it in your microwave, you don't have to worry about it drying out. When cooking pork, always keep the dish covered to maintain an environment around the pork at that same temperature of 180 degrees. Now, the next time you want to impress somebody, serve this roast, because it looks as good as it tastes. And I'll be right back to show you how. You know, wax paper is such a handy material to use when you're preparing anything in the kitchen. When I stuff this pork loin, usually part of the stuffing ends up all over the preparation area, so when I have wax paper here, just wrap it up and throw it away, and it's so easy to clean up. All right, to make a stuffed pork loin, take a loin of pork, just pure meat here, and take one of your sharp boning knives and just run it down the center of the pork. Make sure you don't go through the sides, and then cut lengthwise, and then go the other way and make another X. And if you don't go all the way through, just simply turn it over and do the same thing from the other end. Now, the stuffing I have prepared for this pork loin is a mixture of dried fruit and also chopped up apples, and we've got some grapes in there, some raisins, and also some of this larger dried fruit like this. You can buy this in a package at any one of your markets. Okay, take some of this and just stuff it into that pocket that you've made. Just push it in there, and then what I like to do is intersperse it with other things like prunes. Here's a dried pear. You can put in dried apples, and again, more of this mixture. Just stuff and pack it in there as securely as you can. Now, as you put it in, it's going to expand in the center of the roast, and also, when you cook it, the expansion is going to allow some of that stuff to come pouring out of the end. So to avoid that from happening, take some skewers, wooden or metal, it makes no difference. You know the turkey skewers that you have that are little metal ones? Those are great because you can use them over and over again. Just throw them in the dishwasher, but make sure they don't fall through into the mechanism. But take all this dried fruit, pack it into the pork loin just like this, and then take some skewers. Now, these are the barbecue type of skewers, and just stick them through the end, all the way through like this. And that'll prevent that expansion from forcing out the dried fruit. Really a very, very simple way. Cover this securely. Remember I said you've got to maintain an atmosphere of around 180 degrees in the pork and also around the pork on the outside. So, place a cover over the top, microwave for about 7 minutes per pound for, let's say, about 20 minutes, then check the temperature. And this is one of the handiest tools you can use. It's an instant read thermometer. The last portion of the cooking, the last 10 minutes, spread some chutney over the top, and let me show you what you have. It's just a fantastic looking roast. There's a Scandinavian pork loin. Serve that to some company, and they're going to say, wow, is that ever pretty and is that ever good? So, didn't I tell you? It's really not so hard to cook by microwave if you think microwave. Of course, the proof is in the eating. I'm Donovan Fondre, and thanks for watching. And if you want to get more of my personal recipes and techniques, get a copy of my full-color cookbook called Microwaves Are for Cooking at your local microwave accessory store. Or write to me and